What if life wasn't about keeping up? What if you could step off the treadmill and find peace?
Well, good morning. Happy Sunday to you. Very, very blown away by our media team. It's such a great production. I want to share with you really quick a wake-up call that I had just a few weeks ago. I have my Mondays as my day off, and my wife works on Mondays. And so I hang out with my two sons. I've got an almost 4-year-old and an 18-month-old, and we call it Dad Day. We fill it with activities and good times. But we were, a couple of Mondays ago, sitting at the family table, and my boys were eating. I can't remember quite what they were eating, whether it was breakfast or morning tea, but I was doing something on my phone. And I was so consumed with what was going on my phone that I did not realize quite what was happening around me. And unbeknownst to me, my beautiful 18-month-old, who is a firecracker of a young man, I will say, has climbed out of his high chair and is now crawling across the table towards me. But I am unaware because I am consumed with whatever. I don't even know what was going on. I can't remember what I was doing at the time. But the 18-month-old finally gets his way over to me and with an almighty slap cracks my phone out of my hands and yells, "No!" Now, I don't know about you if you've had such a startling wake-up call, but my 18-month-old was like, "Hey, buddy, this thing, not good for you, not good for me." So what are we talking about today? We're going to talk about screen time. And so you'll notice that we're not actually going to use the big dog behind me. It's off. And I encourage you, if you've got a phone with you, put that thing under your chair. Don't be distracted. It's going to be a good time. All right. So if you're new with us, you're probably wondering what is going on. Okay, we're in a 4-week series called Burnout Society. We are understanding that this is a significant cultural moment for all of us. Burnout is such a hot topic. Everyone says, "I'm burnt out, I'm burnt out, I'm burnt out." And we thought, well, if everyone's burnt out, we should probably talk about it. And so we're going to take 4 weeks to talk about it. Last week, we kicked it off, understanding what it is and how to deal with it. If you have not seen last week's content, I encourage you to jump on YouTube and you can have a bit of a look. But today, we're going to tackle screen time. And really, the core of burnout, what we're trying to understand, is that we are expending energy faster than we are replenishing it. There is an imbalance between what we are outputting and what is coming back in. And what we kind of realized last week is that for most of us, we're kind of on a knife's edge where these two things are almost equal, where we are outputting almost the same as we are inputting, but oftentimes more. And what ends up happening is over weeks and months and years, we kind of expend more than what we've got in reserve, and we find ourselves in a state of exhaustion that doesn't seem to go away. And so screen time is what we're going to talk about today, and it might seem an odd one to put in Burnout Society, but I think you'll be shocked at it. I had a look at my own screen time usage, and I'm using my phone on average 2.5 hours a day. Now, that doesn't seem like much. The average in Australia right now, if you're over the age of 22, is about 4 hours a day. So I'm feeling pretty good about myself. I don't know about you. If you are 18 to 22, average screen time, about 6 hours. If you are 12 to 18, it's about 10. Oh, confronting. More confronting, though. Let's put this in the scale of a year, okay? I'm using my phone 2.5 hours per day. Do you know what that totals out to within a calendar year? That's 1.5 months I'm spending on a 4.8-inch screen instead of in the world around me. If you're at that 6-hour mark, 3 months of your calendar year are spent on a phone. And if you're in that 10-hour territory, 5 months of your year are spent on your phone. That's more than you are sleeping. This is a considerable thing. We've got to talk about it. It's a big problem. Now, why is it a big problem? Because what you and I forget is that there is input fatigue as well as output fatigue. Right? Whenever we talk about burnout, everyone's like, "I've got so much going on. I'm serving here, I'm working here, I'm doing this, I'm playing this. Look at all the stuff I'm outputting." But what we forget is that we can have input fatigue as well. Cast your mind, if you will, back to school. Do you not remember finishing a school day and feeling absolutely exhausted. Like, oh my gosh, I need a nap for like 14 hours after that 6-hour day. And everyone that's working full-time was like, just you wait, kid, right? But none of us remember high school because it was like the worst time. So now we're trying to move on and become adults, right? But all the students, right? You talk to a high school kid. How was your day? Oh, yeah, I'm exhausted. Why? Because we spent 6 hours ramming content into their brain saying, learn all this stuff. So what do we do at the end of the day? We get to the end of a long day of work, and then we sit on our phone ramming our brain filled with more content. And we wonder why we're tired. We spend 4 hours on the thing, and we're like, I'm more tired now than I was before. Because we have input fatigue, and it's just as bad as output fatigue. But thankfully, you and I are not actually the first people to have to kind of deal with this. There's something that I'm kind of very, very aware of is that this time of history is pretty unique. And what I wanted to do was kind of look at, well, when is another time in history that's been pretty unique, and how do we kind of deal with that? So interestingly, there was a letter that was written by an early Christian 2,000 years ago by the name of Paul, writes his letter to the Christians that live in a town called Ephesus. Now, Ephesus at the time is actually really similar to our current cultural climate. It's basically, as an entire people group, the city of Ephesus is trying to understand who they are, and they're seeking their understanding through two ways. The first way is through sexuality. How do I sexually express myself, and what does that mean for my identity? And the second way is spirituality. And so I think if you take a step back and you look at our Perth, Western Australia context, that's basically what we're dealing with as well. How do we as a people kind of chiefly identify ourselves? We identify ourselves firstly through our sexuality, and then secondly through our spirituality. I mean, in my local shopping center, I was walking through the other day, and I passed 3 different shops that were doing either some kind of tarot reading or some kind of crystal meditation kind of style thing. We are a spiritually hungry culture, and so I find the letter of Ephesus extremely helpful to us. And why I think it's helpful is because Paul, the guy who writes the letter, basically says, if you're in this kind of place, if you're in a specific time, this is some helpful advice. And so I'm going to be reading from Ephesians chapter 5, and it won't be on the screens because we're not doing screen time. I've got a real book here. I know, crazy. So I'm going to be from chapter 5 in verse 15. And this is what Paul says. He says, so be careful how you live. Don't live like fools, but like those who are wise. Make the most of every opportunity in these evil days. Don't act thoughtlessly, but understand what the Lord wants you to do. Now, I find this passage to me fascinating for a number of reasons, but the first thing I think that we really need to understand from what Paul is saying is he is deeply entrenched in a culture that is trying as hard as it can to identify itself through sexuality and spirituality. Now, what I find fascinating about Paul is that he does not equate the problem that the normal Christian followers are dealing with as culture. Do you notice in there he doesn't say, oh my gosh, how bad is the culture? How many times has someone just like me with a microphone just like this one, with a book just like that one, said, oh, look at all the people out there, they're horrible. Oh my gosh, this culture, it's so evil. We're all, life's so hard. Paul doesn't do that. Interestingly, Paul doesn't even blame the people. Paul doesn't say, if all these other people could just understand that there's only one way to express sexuality and one way for spirituality, everything would be fine. He doesn't say that either. So what's Paul saying? He's saying the problem is not the culture that we're living in. The culture is not even the people that we are surrounded by. I think this is important for us as Christians. We need to remember this. People and culture are not the problem. What is the problem? Paul makes it really clear. The problem is time. What does he say? His words are, the days are evil. Have you ever thought about the fact that right now we are living in a truly unique moment in history? If you are 17 years old, you have never lived in a world without an iPhone. Can you let that settle in for a second? If you are 14, you have never lived in a world without Instagram. And if you are 4, you have never lived in a world with open access artificial intelligence. Can we let that sink in for a second? This time in history is truly unique. And I've got some news for you. It's not going away. Like, it's not like tomorrow Apple's going to say, hey, look, we've thought about it. The iPhone has caused some problems. We're actually going to recall all of them. We've got 42% of the market share, but we want all of that back. We know we're a $1 trillion company. We finally made it, but on balance, poor form from us. We'll just take them all. They're not going to do that. And how many people go, that's it. I did the same thing. I've deleted social media. I'm going to bury my head. I'm not involved in the world anymore. I'm running away. Oh, look at me. Oh, you can't contact me at the moment. You've got to send me a carrier pigeon. Like, oh no, I sold my phone and I bought a Nokia. Look, I'm going the dumb phone, right? We can't bury our heads in the sand. It's not going anywhere. It's only going to become more of an issue for us. And so what you and I need to understand when it comes to burnout is firstly, we need to understand what it's physically doing to us, but we need to learn how to manage it because this problem is not going away. I mean, think about it. This is how fast things are moving. When I was in primary school, we had dial-up internet. You had to physically connect to the internet. You had to like dial an actual number through your computer. People are like, what? That sounds strange. It was. You couldn't use the phone while you were on the internet. I mean, kids today can't even understand. They're doing 7 things at once on their phone. Like, I can't even, man, crazy. Anyway, I'm off topic. Because we don't have screens, I can't be kept in control. So what is God saying to us, right, in a time just like ours, yeah? Be very careful how you live. Don't live like fools. I don't think he can be much more direct than that. But what I think is most powerful is he's saying, make the most of every opportunity. And I got to tell you, I'm learning this the hard way, right? I've got an almost 4-year-old and an 18-month-old, like I said. I missed that meal with them because I was consumed with what was going on my phone. I don't think that is making the most of every opportunity. They are never going to be this age again. And I missed out on that because I chose to be engaged in a device instead of what's going on in front of my face. And so what I would want to share with you is a few tools, I think, that are going to be helpful for all of us when it comes to managing our screen time. The first one is use the tool, but don't be a tool. Okay, let that sink in for a second. Use the tool, but don't be a tool. What do I mean by this? You've got in your pocket something that has more processing power than the first rocket that went to the moon. You have got access to basically every bit of human information that has ever been produced. You want to know something, you can find out in under a second. You have got a camera in your pocket, no matter how good quality your phone is, whether it's 5 years old or 1 day old, you've got a camera in your pocket that is better than almost anything that was available 20 years ago. You have a moment where you can take out a thing that's in your pocket and you can capture everything that's in front of you without having to worry about, oh, where is this going to go? Have I got enough film? You guys might not remember this, but you used to have to like check whether or not you were going to take the photo because you only got 21 of them. And then you would go and get it developed and you'd find that 3 of them had your thumb in it and then you can't, so then you actually had 18, but the 3 you needed were the ones with your finger in it. So now you're like really upset about it. Now we'll take 21 photos and then Google will just fix it for us and give us the best version. It's an incredible tool. I mean, think about Plato and Aristotle. They're spending 8 hours a day arguing about the greatest questions of life off a tiny bit of stone tablet that someone carved by hand, and that's all they've got. And they think forward to 2,000 years later, and we have got literally the entire library of human history at our fingertips. And what do? We watch a 12-year-old explaining what skibbity means. Use the tool. Don't be a tool. Okay, second one. We want to embrace the gift of limits. Every phone has the ability now to control how much you do or do not spend on specific applications. I mean, this to me is marketing at another level. We recognize that there's a problem and we're going to solve the problem. Hey, don't buy the other phones, buy our one. We'll help you use it less. Well, why did I buy it if I'm going to use it less? But you can embrace the gift of limits. You can literally set your phone to say, I don't want to spend any more than this amount of time on a specific application. Now, the problem for many of us, okay, and I've seen this happen in real time, we set the limit, but we so don't care about the limit that we've just got the muscle memory down to be able to bypass it. I was with someone the other day, and they opened up Instagram, and it said, you've reached the limit. And your boy muscle memoried the passcode and carried on going. And I was like, bro, did you just like bypass the thing? And he's like, did I? Like, he didn't even recognize. He's so programmed to just skip the limit. Get someone else to set up the code. Embrace the gift of limits. I deleted Facebook and Instagram a couple of weeks ago off my phone. I dropped my screen time by 50%. I'm not even exaggerating. I didn't think I even used it that much. I had the screen limit thing, which I bypassed. I deleted it. I'm like, wow, look at all this time I have left with my kids. Okay, number 3. You got to swap your screen time for some green time. That's good. You're going to remember that, okay? I do this on my Tuesday lunch breaks, okay? I was finding myself getting my lunchtime on Tuesday, and I'm like, oh my gosh, my brain's a fog. So I started going for a run on my Tuesday lunchtime. I invited a couple of buddies. Now they join me, and now there's like 10 of us that go for a run on Tuesdays because everyone's trying to do the same thing. We are trying to escape this monotony of screens. You know that there's like literal studies that say if you drop your screen time by an hour and then go and spend that time in the outdoors, doesn't even matter. You don't have to drive out to like Ferndale or something. It's like, I'm just going to walk into the sunlight of my backyard. Your cortisol levels halve. You let that settle in for a second. 1 hour less on your screen, just spending it outside, your stress levels halve. Who would like their stress levels halved? That's amazing. Your doctor wants your stress levels halved. Just spend it outside instead of on your phone. Swap your screen time for some green time. Number 4, treat your time like your money. How many of us, and this is me big time, we track the expense dollar for dollar. The other day, we get notifications from our bank if like money is spent on an account, and this notification came through. I called my wife. I was like, did you just spend XYZ at XYZ? And she's like, yeah, I did. And yet, you and I will get home from work and we'll be like, you know what? I'm going to spend just 10 minutes having a quick scroll. And then 4 hours later, we're like, oh my gosh, I'm at the very deep end of a long TikTok hole here. And we never go back to think, is that actually the best way for me to have spent that time? If that was money, if I just burnt $400 without even thinking about it, I'd be quite confronted. My wife would be confronted. And yet when it comes to time, we don't even think about it. And yet time, I would say, is one of our most precious gifts. We get 86,400 seconds a day. Everyone gets it. Doesn't matter how much you earn or how qualified you are. And yet we will burn it on absolute nothingness every single day. And so I encourage you, spend your time like you spend your money. And number 5, which I think is for me the most practical and the most helpful, is no phones in your bedroom. Now, we got married when we were 22, my wife and I. And when we got married, I made the commitment, I'm not going to have my phone in my room. And so I put my phone out in the living room, charged out there. And I don't want to over-exaggerate this, but this kind of like changed my life overnight. I don't know if you realize this, right? But there's like big problems with being on your phone right before bed and as the first thing that you do when you wake up. Because if it's the last thing that you look at and the first thing that you look at, what is going to consume your mind for the rest of your day is a little device. Now, some of you, I can hear you saying it, but Cochrane, you don't understand. I use my phone as an alarm. Very good. Lily has got a gift for you, okay? Is that you? Is anyone here saying, yeah, I need an alarm clock? Well, look at this. Look at this. I got you one. This one here I got from Kmart, okay? Now, this was actually, we splurged, okay? This was $25, all right? Let me read you some features here. FM radio, baby. Let's go. It has indoor temperature and a humidity sensor, and you can set it to 12 or 24 hours. Hello, so the military people are going to be happy. But the best part about this one, you can plug it in with a USB cable. So you know your little charger that you've got there for your phone? Well, look at this. You can just repurpose that bad boy straight into this. Or if you want to go crazy, you can run it on batteries. This is $25. You can buy an $8 one if you want, but it doesn't have the wood look. I think that's a bit, that's nice. So would anyone like this alarm clock? Does anyone feel like they need an alarm clock instead of their phone? Genuinely. Yeah, would you like to? Here you go. Yeah, we'll bill you later. No, I'm just kidding. We won't bill you. Genuinely. Because if we are starting our day with a digital feed that we can't control, what are we doing with our brain? I don't think it's where we want to end up. Now, everyone in the room, I'm going to guarantee you, everyone in the room is saying this. I agree, Alistair. Those are all good points. Great stats. Fantastic. And yet, none of us are going to do anything about it. Great 5 points. Very practical. Thanks for that. I'm not going to do any of them. Why? Because we're exhausted. We're tired. No one makes good decisions when they're exhausted. This is why we do it. We get to the end of a long day and we find ourselves mid-scroll going, I wish I wasn't doing this. And yet we can't seem to stop. It's almost like it's designed to keep our attention. What a bunch of dogs, honestly. Very, very unfair. Why are we exhausted? We've made bad choices. And I came across this quote a couple of weeks ago, and I think it's really pertinent to our time. It's from a book called Screwtape Letters, which is written by an author called C.S. Lewis. C.S. Lewis kind of came to fame in the 40s and 50s. He's a very, very famous Christian author. Wrote a bunch of really great fiction books as well, like Chronicles of Narnia. But he writes this book called Screwtape Letters. And it's basically, it's not real, it's like a fantasy kind of book. But essentially, he writes letters between the head of the demons and like a servant of the demons. And he kind of tracks what he imagines their conversations to be like. And I think we've got to remember, we are just like Ephesus. We're in a spiritually hungry time. Most of our culture is understanding that the physical material world is not it. We are trying to understand what is the other kind of layer that is going on in this world around us. And this is what C.S. Lewis tries to attempt in the Screwtape Letters. He tries to imagine for us what it would look like for the evil side of the demonic world to be kind of infiltrating our world. And we'd think it'd be crazy stuff, you know, like, oh yeah, the demons are going to like possess people and they're going to come out in like crazy ways and like, you know, it's like the Shining kind of style things. But I came across this quote and it's very chilling. It's the head demon writing to the little demon, and he's basically saying to the little demon, hey, when everyone starts out, they're thinking, let's get some big sins on the table. Let's try to get people like having lots of sex and like killing each other. That's great. But this is what the head demon says. It's extremely chilling. He says, murder is no better than cards if cards will do the trick. Here's the reality. Many of us in the room think we're not that bad because hey, I haven't killed anyone this week. I'm doing pretty good. And yet, which of us can honestly say we are living our lives to their fullest potential? That we are making the most of every opportunity? I mean, genuinely think about this. If you're a follower of Jesus in the room, you have been brought from spiritual death to spiritual life. You have been given the mandate to become a cultural architect and take dominion of the world, to see Jesus' name made famous in your generation, to see others also come from death to life. And yet we spend somewhere between 1 and 5 months of our year on our phones. Satan doesn't need to possess a bunch of people with demons to distract us. We're distracted enough. Because we'd rather spend our time on our phones than we would dealing with the people in front of us. And I think there's an analogy that's going to be helpful for all of us, and it's the story of Peter Pan. Has everyone seen the film Peter Pan? Has everyone seen this Disney production? It's an older story than that. I don't know if you've read it. It's a fascinating story. Peter Pan is a character who lives in a land called Neverland. And he's a boy, but in Neverland he never has to grow up. He lives in the land of endless possibilities and magic. And he's the king. And what is he the king of? He's the king of the lost boys. And what ends up happening is Peter Pan meets someone from the real world, a young girl by the name of Wendy. And Wendy, unlike Peter Pan, is actually living in a specific time with a specific opportunity in front of her and does not have the gift of endless possibilities. You have this fascinating interaction where Peter Pan is morbidly scared of Captain Hook, who really Captain Hook represents mortality. You've got the crocodile with a clock in its belly that's chasing him, right? Time's catching up to him because he's eventually going to die and he's going to lose out on his chance. But Peter Pan is living in this land of seemingly endless possibilities. But not one of those possibilities is actually real. And in fact, the imagery is really confronting. He has this fairy that he's attracted to in Tinkerbell. And he sacrifices the opportunity of a real relationship with a real woman in the form of Wendy because he would rather live in a fantasy land of endless opportunities, despite the fact that that fantasy land he knows is not real. Now, for you and for me today, we're just like Peter. We are holding on to a phone that is a fantasy land of endless possibilities and opportunities, but not one of them is real. We spend our time looking at the way that other people are experiencing real life, thinking one day that would be great. If only I had that. If only I could go on that holiday. If only I had a spouse like that. If only I had a friendship group like that. And we literally know it's endless. I think they've said it would take something like 1,000 years to watch currently all the content on YouTube. You have an endless stream of possibilities for your life. But what's fascinating about the story of Peter Pan, it's the story that's the same for you and for me. Peter has to choose which one he will sacrifice. Is Peter going to sacrifice the endless opportunities that are not real to live one real and meaningful life? Or will he sacrifice that one real, meaningful life to live in a fantasy land? And I got to tell you, we've got that same choice. We can actually choose to sacrifice the endless opportunities that exist in our phone and deal with the real opportunity that's in front of us. I mean, have you thought about this? For those of us that are single in the room, how many times have you missed meeting a person that you might marry because you were living in the fantasy land that existed on your phone? If you're like me, how many times have you missed an opportunity to be a better dad to your kids because you were spending time on your phone instead of what was happening in front of you? I mean, think about this for us as Christians, right? In Australia, 93% of this country is not engaged in church. And we're spending 5 months of our year on our phones. How could we hope to engage in a meaningful conversation about someone's role in their greater sphere and purpose of life when we're spending all of our time consumed with a 4.8-inch display? Oh, but it's the OLED. It's much nicer, better colors. We are sacrificing the one real opportunity in front of us to live in the land of infinite possibilities, even though they aren't real. But this is what's beautiful about following Jesus, is that he has actually walked this journey. I mean, think about it for a minute. Jesus exists in heaven, has existed since the beginning of everything, outside of time and space, was there in the creation moment where the cosmos was breathed into being. Light, sound, stars, energy, matter, all of it, all at once. I don't know if you know this, but Christians believe in a pretty big bang as well. Like, that was probably a big bang. I don't think it was like a quiet affair when the universe rushed into being. And Jesus was there in that moment. He had endless opportunities. He could have built anything that he wanted. He could have made the earth a cube instead of a sphere if he wanted to. Had endless possibilities. And yet chose to impart his image onto human beings just like you and me. And those human beings chose against him. And even though he was sitting in a throne in heaven with angels singing a chorus of holy, 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 could have restarted time if he wanted to, could have gone back to before we messed everything up and tried to give us another reset, could have created an alien race to come and destroy us, could have created a whole new universe if he wanted to. Endless possibilities. But what does Jesus choose? He chooses to sacrifice the endless possibilities of everything for one single opportunity, to limit himself to becoming a human being. Chooses to put on human flesh and live a normal human life and die a brutal death to pay the price for you and for me to re-enter into a relationship with God. Jesus knows what it feels like to fight this fight of choosing one single opportunity that feels limiting in the moment, but ultimately is so much more fruitful. I mean, think about this for a minute. Jesus gave up every limitless opportunity, and what looked like limitation by putting himself on a body actually created something limitless. which is the forgiveness available to the entire human race. And yet for you and for me, instead of embracing that spiritual life, instead of embracing that forgiveness and being so changed from the inside out to go and share this with anybody who will listen, we distract ourselves with our phones. And we wonder why at the end of a day we are so exhausted. It's because we worked all day and we output. And then we thought this will be relaxing, and then we got input for 4 hours. And we lost out on living the joy and taking the most of the opportunity that was in front of us. And so I want to challenge you today. Sacrifice the limitless opportunities that exist through your phone for the real opportunity that God is putting in front of you. Could you imagine with me what our world would look like if we took that seriously? Can you imagine what that would do to your friendships? The other night, I saw a bunch of young guys out to dinner together or out to ice cream. They had a giant stack of phones in the middle of the table, all face down. And I just thought, that's it. It's that kind of simple shift that says, no, I'm choosing to be present and take the most of this opportunity. Can you imagine what our world would look like? It'd be unbelievable. I think it'd be amazing. I think it'd be beautiful. Let me pray for us. Jesus, I want to thank you so much for the gift of limits. I want to thank you so much that you love us so dearly, that you give us an opportunity, one single opportunity in one single moment to be able to love somebody in front of us. I just want to pray that you right now would comfort us in this feeling of stress and this feeling of anxiety and this feeling of burnout, and you would replenish our souls. You would give us joy. I just want to pray for all of us as we use our phones, that we would recognize the gift that they are to us, but that they would be something that we master, something that does not master us. It's for your beautiful name. Well, for us as a church, it's customary to end our gatherings with a prayer of blessings. And so I invite you now, if you're willing and able, to stand to receive this blessing. If anything's come up today and you feel like you want to pray through anything, we have got a team of people down here who would love to pray with you and for you. If coming down the front maybe is too confronting for you, you can jump on the rocks.info, and there is a button there for prayer requests, and we have a team of people who would love to pray for you. But I encourage you now to open up your hands to receive this blessing. Well, Father God, I just want to pray a blessing over everybody in the room and those watching online. Firstly, Lord, that you would give them the blessing of identity of a loved son or a loved daughter of the risen King of the universe. I want to secondly pray a blessing of forgiveness that was bought through the blood of Jesus Christ, through his death, burial, and resurrection. And I just pray against any form of shame or guilt that is currently nestling in people's hearts. And I just pray forgiveness over those individuals. Holy Spirit, I want to pray that you would be with us as we move on from this place. I pray your comforting presence and your comforting peace across all of us. And I pray this, Lord, not only over the people in the room or watching online, but their children and their children's children, and for every generation to come, that we would be a people marked by your grace, that we would see your name made famous in our own generation. It's for your beautiful name we pray. Amen.